Hey there, everyone, and welcome to another video. This is Cassandra from CassandraTyndall.com. And today's video, I want to share a few ideas around the transit that's on everyone's lips right now. And via Instagram, I had a couple of requests to discuss it a little bit. And that is this weekend's triple conjunction of Mars, Uranus, and the North Node, which get together at 18 degrees of Taurus. So there are so many ways that we can unwrap or unpack this particular transit. But today, I really just want to focus on maybe the more personal perspectives to take on it. Obviously, there's a whole lot of collective issues that are coming up in very real and obvious ways. If you would like to take a deep dive into the collective side of things, I would like to put forward my colleague Cam White of Cam White Astro, who has done a fabulous take on Pluto in Aquarius and, of course, Uranus and Taurus as well. But today I just want to perhaps give you some a bit of a long-range survival guide on how to work with this particular transit. So to get started with this, we really need to look at this particular aspect as an exclamation point in the longer cycle of Uranus and Taurus. So Uranus first went into Taurus in May of 2018. So we had May to November 2018 for 6 months. Then Uranus came back into Taurus after regressing into or retrograding back into Aries for a little bit, and came back and settled into Taurus on March 2019, where it will stay until July 2025. So we've got another 3 years of this. So we're definitely past the halfway point, but this particular Mars-Uranus North Node is certainly the main feature. So when we think about where Uranus has been in relationship to Mars so far this cycle, that initial visit of Uranus in Taurus in 2018 also saw the retrogradation of Mars in Aquarius forming that square aspect. So you might remember Mars retrograded in Aquarius over the South Node in 2018. Then when Uranus came back to Taurus in March 2019, it came back and said hi to Mars, who was already in Taurus. They didn't make a conjunction then, but they were co-present in the sign. So with those two ingresses of Uranus into Taurus, there was that Mars involvement there. Now, I don't think this is exclusive to me. I'm sure I've heard other astrologers talk about it before, but I say this a lot to members in my Golden Circle Club, which is my exclusive membership. I'll give you some details about those in the information box below. But there is a thing when a slower moving planet, so a superior planet, say Mars outwards, ingresses into a new sign. The first aspect it either makes or receives, excluding the moon, will tell us a lot about what that aspect, or sorry, what that transit is going to be like. So I think that's just a little thing to put in your pocket when we think about Uranus, the North Node, and Mars. You know, Uranus has already had quite a few clashes with Mars already. So we had the ingress of the ingress of Uranus in Taurus in 2019 with Mars already there. Then in 2021, January 2021, we had what's now famously called the insurrection. We also had the sort of the momentum of the rollout of a so-called medicine. And we also had changes in government in the USA, and there were so many various things that happened under that sort of real spark of sort of change and revolution that wasn't necessarily, it was dramatic, let's put it that way. So January 2022 saw the North Node then enter Taurus and then share that co-present with Uranus, who's already been there for a while. Then July 5, so just a few weeks ago, we had Mars move into Taurus, where it's going to be until August 20. So we're setting a bit of a backdrop or a scene for some of the the Mars Uranus action that's already taken place, and now we've had a few of those already, and now of course we've got the North Node in the picture now that is amplifying all of this volatility. So obviously there's a lot of collective issues that some astrologers have been talking about for a little while. And, we can see the obvious, the things that we hold dear, the things that we don't like to see disruption around, the things that we do like really steady, available, and certain. Basically, food and money. Those are things that we really rely on for our subsistence. And so we do have a lot of issues collectively. Food security, farming, if you're keeping your eye on what's happening in Europe at the moment. Of course, we also know who is the biggest landholder of farmland in the USA. Of course, there's a lot of economic stress that people are feeling right now as well, in the attempt to roll out these digital currencies. So there's a lot of things that we would like, stable food and money, that have come into a chaotic and disorderly phase right now. But as I said, the purpose of this video is to really hone in on our birth charts and our own lives from that more individual perspective. So it's important to consider that, yes, we all do have a house in our birth chart ruled by the sign of Taurus. So if you don't have any planets or angles there, you still have an area of life that might be a little bit more shaken rather than stirred right now. And what I want to do is share the screen with you and show you the ingress of this particular, or not the ingress, the conjunction of these three planets coming together. So the hotspot degree that we're talking about here is 18 degrees of Taurus. So if you have planets or points such as the ascendant, the midheaven, or the IC or the descendant, I'd say sort of anywhere probably between 15 to 16 to about 22 of Taurus, 21, 22, you're going to be feeling this. I actually do have a planet of Taurus at 18 degrees. So yeah, it's we might discuss that as we move on. So this is the hotspot, and it's not just the hotspot now. And I think this is the whole point or purpose of this video, is when we think about change, particularly when we're talking about change in a sign like Taurus, it's not a one and done type of process. It's going to be a little bit more of a cycle or an endurance or something that's going to have some teething issues before you get to the end game or that end goal. The reason I say that is because we do have another Saturn square Uranus taking place. So Saturn in Aquarius squaring this Uranus in Taurus, and that will happen at 18 degrees in October. And yes, it doesn't perfected to the minute. That doesn't matter. It is at the same degree. That is more than enough. So if you do kind of, print out reports from your Solarfy or other software, it's not going to show up as an aspect. But if you look at the ephemeris, if you speak to people with planets or points around 18 Taurus, they're feeling it. So even though the aspect doesn't exactly perfect, I'm sure for thousands of years, astrologers, in antiquity would have seen it like that. Of course, they wouldn't have seen Uranus, but you get the point. Now, not only that, there's also a 2-month process where Uranus and Saturn stay within a 3-degree orb of each other, because Uranus is going to move retrograde and then Saturn is going to station direct. So they're even slower than usual, drawing out that square for a longer period of time. Now, in April and May of 2023, Uranus is going to hit 18 degrees again as it recovers from the retrograde phase that begins, let me just check, I'm pretty sure it happens, Uranus, it happens in late August. So Uranus is preparing to slow right down. So point being that, yes, the big drama happens over the next several days, but it's not a one and done thing. It's going to be a process, which is what change is all about. It is a process. So let's break down a few of the themes and the key ideas of planetary archetypes. So firstly, Uranus is that first planet that we see that, beyond the naked eye. You do need some kind of technology in order to be able to see it. There are a couple of exceptions, and yes, you need perfect situations. You need Uranus in opposition to the sun. It can be seen, but if you think about it, it took several millennia before it actually got identified. It goes to show how rare its visibility is. So that's just a side point. There is a technicality around Uranus there. But when you think about, and I think I have it, oh, yes, I do. So when you think about the myth behind Uranus, it often has been a little bit misrepresented. And it's probably Richard Tarnas in this book, which is called Prometheus the Awakener. It's probably my favorite go-to book for everything Uranus. And he's been one of the spearheads, I guess, in associating the planet Uranus with the myth of Prometheus, who is about stealing the fire from the gods and gives that fire to humanity to free them from bondage. So Uranus is also linked to the idea of freedom, of rebellion, of revolution and change. On the personal level, of course, those are things as well. But on the personal level, I see them show up as this Uranus can bring a certain level of angstiness or anxiety, that there is a desire to be seen for who you truly are, or finding a certain authenticity, or a breakaway from the status quo. So Uranus is, Uranus transits often feel like those tectonic plates shifting under the surface of the earth, and then eventually those tremors get stronger and stronger and stronger. And if you've not been paying attention to those tremors, then the earthquake happens. And so there's a shattering or a splitting that can happen. And sometimes Uranus transits can sort of bring a before the Uranus transit influence, and then after, and things can look very, very different afterwards. Particularly if they hit the lights. I was saying that on my Instagram this week. A few people were asking me, what are some really significant transits you can either remember in your life or in other people's or clients' lives? And I'm like, the outers on the lights, hands down, really do stand out. So again, if you have a personal planet, especially the luminaries, the sun or the moon, very close to that 18-degree point, you're going to be feeling this one. So then the North Node really speaks to the head of the serpent or the dragon. I often, when I'm teaching astrology, I'll often link the idea of the North Node to, remember the old computer game Pac-Man? Just this, bodiless thing, just chewing and devouring and swallowing everything up. There is an insatiable and amplifying, hungry quality, ambitious quality to the North Node. It reminds me of the idea of everybody wants the biggest piece of cake, right? And the North Node will really speak to that, this desire for something more, and whatever that resembles. So when you combine that with Uranus, there is that quickening energy, that, anything that you could sort of say, well, it could happen in like 10 to 12 months. You're probably looking at more like 4 to 6 months. As this real things are moving very quickly with this. The North Node can be so hungry for progress and so hungry for whatever it symbolizes that it's hungry for, can often make miscalculations and a lack of judgment around there, because it's very hedonistic and it's very heady. There's no digestive quality to the North Node because it's separated from the body. So there is this jumping the gun, or tends to not see problems, or to be able to think beyond the immediate, because it's all just about the satisfying of whatever it is indicated by in that moment. So there is this, to basically summarize that, the North Node really does speak to the idea of amplification and kind of pumping things up, or, the steroids, and making things bigger and bigger faster than their natural due course. So then we have Mars. The Mars can be that ultimate chain breaker. It's the sword, it's the knife, it's that cutting influence. It's also I think it was Vedius Valens talked about action and trouble. It does bring strife. It does bring chaos. It can bring violence. It's like adding a little bit of gunpowder to something. That explosive quality. It's just that fuel to the fire that's already, in play with Uranus and the North Node there. So the Uranus and the North Node do have a co-presence for a longer period of time, but as they come together, then for about a 36-hour window this weekend, so we're talking like 31st of July, 1st of August, depending on your time zone. So we've roughly got that 36-hour window where we have this co-presence of three planetary bodies that really do speak to things happening quickly, happening suddenly, happening with that potentiality for drastic change. Things that you would think would take X amount of time actually take Y amount of time. So really has this speeding of things up. So on the personal level, you may have that Promethean moment of your own where you have this stealing of the fire of some kind. And if you think about fire as an element, it is the most inspirational of elements because it's the element that gets the closest to the gods, right? So you might have this, whether it's a flash of insight or a spark of inspiration, and a decisive moment where you might take action on something, make change, or head in a radical new direction that has been simmering in the background for a little while, but maybe you've had your head in the sand about it, or you've been actively resistant about it, because this is all happening in the sign of Taurus, right? And Taurus is pretty much the antithesis of change. We've got this really obstinate, recalcitrant energy when it comes to Taurus. I've got planets in Taurus, there are good things about it, but, change, flexibility, adaptability, and movement are not a part of the DNA when it comes to the sign of Taurus. So we have, the Uranus Taurus dynamic is, that just doesn't get along. They're the antithesis of each other. Mars is in detriment in the sign. So, we've got this active resistance to change, this active resistance to progress. And, whatever is the new sensation is not always, everything that is new is not always better. And sometimes, there can be that nostalgic component there as well. Sometimes we can look back on things with a greater familiarity than what the actuality of it was. And so, generally speaking, the energy of Taurus does not have a great relationship to change. So these astro energies could spark a revolution of sorts with you. What was stable, solid, secure, a sure bet, yep, this is the thing, I'm happy with this, I can't see myself doing anything different, could feel like all of a sudden, or maybe it's been building for some time, that what felt great now feels like a gilded cage, or it's boring, or you just sort of go, this isn't working for me anymore. And it doesn't have to be something radical or totally life shifting. As I said earlier, I have Venus at 18 Taurus, and all of a sudden last week I was starting to make some changes. I love cosmetics, I love makeup, I always have. And, sometimes you just look at, obviously this is a girl thing probably, but I looked at the mirror, I'm like, whatever I'm doing with myself just has not been working. I'm 45 now. Maybe I need to adapt and change rather than going with those tried and true methods. And, I have an appointment with my hairdresser tomorrow. So who knows what I'll look like in the video next week. So, sometimes it takes those little steps that will lead to greater change in your life as well. And so this is something that I found myself counseling clients with, basically, since Uranus has been in Taurus, is the baby steps approach. For the energy of Taurus, it's not necessarily this one and done, all or nothing type of energy, although that can certainly happen, but it's more about, warming up to the idea of small changes, and then the bigger changes become more easy to do. It's like you can't just decide, right, I'm going to lose 20 kilos. It's a process, but the spark of fire, the decision to take action, is what really gets that ball rolling, so to speak. And so on another level, Taurus is ruled by Venus. And so Venus is associated with the idea of relationship, with values, what we hold dear, what is joyful to us, what is pleasurable, and what is collectively like a socially harmonious things. And so this triple conjunction may also prompt you to question what is beyond your core needs. So once we get beyond food and money and shelter, those basic principles, what does my social life look like? What are my core values around the company I keep, the things I do for pleasure, the things that just sprinkle sugar on life? So you may have played it safe, or maybe within a comfort zone for too long, and realize I'm in some kind of social prison or some kind of social jail here. Although collectively we could also see that too, right? But I'm not going to go here on the YouTube. If you want those kind of insights, the golden circle's where to go. But we can see that happening, right? So if we think about it, the last time the North Node was in Taurus was, I think, 2003, 2004. The year Facebook was invented. More people were getting on the internet. Social media started to gain some traction. And so maybe not social media so much, it was still kind of blogs and newsletters were the primary source of communication. But the point being is that the way we connected with each other, our social interactions started to move increasingly on the digital platforms. And so now that the North Node's returned to Taurus, we might start to question, is that how I really want to associate with everyone digitally? Like maybe you want to get back to basics or change up some of the things that you've been finding yourself doing, which may have been convenient, but necessarily not comfortable. So what is change? It is really about getting outside of a comfort zone, right? Recognizing that a comfort zone actually isn't all that comfortable. And Taurus is a sign that does enjoy comfort. There's nothing more content than a cow chewing the cud in the sunshine. But this energy is like the farmer's branding iron coming along and going, here you go, Daisy, Josie the cow, whatever. You need to move into the other paddock. And so this, is an analogy, I suppose, for, what you could be feeling or experiencing. Many moons ago, I worked in a natural therapies clinic, as a beauty therapist and massage therapist, and while I was studying astrology. And I worked with this wonderful woman, and she was a counselor, and she said, people only seek my help when they are so uncomfortable in their own skin. Change is the only option that they have. And so we don't, as human beings, we don't do change, generally speaking, out of choice. Sometimes it's necessity, or that Promethean awakening, realizing I've actually not been as comfortable as I thought. So while you might get that dose of inspiration or make some decisions to take action this weekend, potentially, it is going to be a process. So like like growing teeth, it takes a process. Like a baby teething, it's a bit painful, it's uncomfortable, the experience of eating is very different. So when I think about Uranus and Taurus and how I've been speaking to clients about this, I've often used the idea of you've just got to Steve Jobs this. And what I mean by that is referring to a speech I think he did in Harvard, where he talked about the path to success isn't a straight line. It is, or you can't, not so much the straight line, but he tried to look ahead and see where he would be, Whereas it's really only in hindsight you can connect the dots. So sometimes you've got to take that step forward, not knowing whether the ground ahead of you, or underneath you rather, is going to be solid or not, which is a real challenge for Taurus. You know, they will actively resist change unless they know it's a guarantee. You know, my mother, she was a Taurus, and, you know, she knocked back significant medical help because there was no guarantee that it was going to work. And then, of course, until she had no choice but to take these drastic measures with her body, she had to kind of do something she'd always actively resisted. So sometimes what we resist persists. And this weekend might bring you that I can't keep doing the same thing all of the time. And so it's a baby steps thing. Change one thing, you know, maybe it's the foundation you're wearing or the hairstyle you have, or maybe it's, you know, the way you drive to work, or maybe it's calling up your friends instead of just texting them all of the time. So whatever you're doing that you know really deep inside you is no longer working, the weekend is going to invite you to maybe a little bit more drastically than what you might prefer to experiment with that idea of change, but also knowing that just because you then change this doesn't mean you can't kind of like then take a step sideways and then move, you know, in sort of different directions. It doesn't have to be just one step and, okay, this is okay, this is the only thing I'm going to do now. So it's a bit like the smorgasbord idea. You go up to the smorgasbord or the buffet. If you're American, I think you tend to say buffet more than smorgasbord. So let's just say you're at a wedding and there's so many selections of food, and then you know, fill up your plate with a few things and it's like, yeah, I didn't really like that, but I think I'm going to go to seconds for this one. So that's what this energy, particularly through until April, May, is like. Now, if you've always worn a certain pair of jeans and you just keep on buying the same pair of jeans, how do you know that maybe another pair of jeans or another brand of jeans are going to look good on you until you go and try them on? And yes, it can be disappointing. They don't fit. You like them, but they don't like you, or maybe you like them, but your bank account doesn't like them. You know, these ideas, but you just don't know if a new pair of jeans are going to fit you until you try it on. So that's a few ideas on how to approach this particular transit. Change doesn't happen overnight. It's a little bit of an evolutionary process. It's not always comfortable, but often it's worth it. And one final point I wanted to make is that this probably isn't your first rodeo as far as Uranus goes, or, you know, and your first Uranus transit. So I really highly doubt that none of you have not been touched by Uranus before. So think about its time in Aries and potentially its time in Pisces and Aquarius before that. So look at your chart, see how Uranus has impacted it before, and think about that, and think about the changes that you had embraced or maybe resisted and went for anyway during those cycles. So as I mentioned, if you did want to get more of what I really think about certain things and more deeper insights into the astrology, my Golden Circle Club is a membership that is available both online and also via an app where there's groups, communities, forums, and also all the videos with all the insights that I deliver each month, but it's a week-to-week thing. Even later today, we have our monthly Q&A call and we discuss the new moon, we talk transits. So it's really good to sort of stay abreast of the moving sky and, you know, get to know how to relate and develop your relationship with the sky and how it impacts your chart and your life. And also, if you're a student of astrology, it's really going to help North Node your studies and your experience, help amplify and progress them further for you. So I really do hope that this has given you a little bit of food for thought, no pun intended, with all the Taurus stuff about this transit. And I'd love to hear your comments in the box below. Where does it hit your chart? What have you experienced so far? Are you nervous for it? Do tell us in the conversation below, and I'd love to connect with you via there. And I'll also put the link for the Golden Circle down there too. So until next time, everyone, I'll see you then.